if you're coming to the edge and you're like, oh man, I want to release the brakes, I want to fly, like I want to feel this, I'm like, you're in the right headspace.
Totally.
Up until you hit that, don't do it.
Welcome to Grit with Wisdom. This is the podcast that delves deep into the inner psyche of mountain bikers from all aspects of our sport in order to discover the tools and the tactics that can help us have more fun out on the trails more often. Our aim here is to help you understand what it takes to push our own personal boundaries in the sport we love from a mental and emotional perspective. Today on the podcast, I'm sitting down here with Steve Vanderhoek. Steve is a North Shore born and bred freeride mountain biker, trail builder, professional firefighter, and also a paramedic. He is known locally for building and riding some of the most precise, exposed, and high consequence lines in the area. And along with his longtime partner Kelsey Toevs, who you can hear from in the previous episode, they make some of the most creative and jaw-dropping mountain bike films around. Most notably, after recovering from a year-long string of injuries that occurred while riding his own North Shore feature,
It got me.
Steve and Kelsey went on to win the 2023 Crankworx Dirt Diaries filmmaking contest, in which Steve returned and rode the same death-defying line.
Horrible.
I can't wait to dive into that. So with this rich background coming from learning to bike at a young age with your dad on the North Shore, Steve got his start in the freeriding scene with some early parts in the North Shore Extreme films, where he'd guinea pig fresh stunts from the legendary North Shore trailbuilder Digger. This led to his first paid mountain biking gig as part of the Flow Show with Dangerous Dan at Crankworx.
You dove deep.
I did, man. I did my research.
Amazing.
And from there, you decided to keep mountain biking as a pure passion as possible, pursuing a career as a professional firefighter. Nowadays, Steve is in a truly unique situation as a sponsored rider who is part of all kinds of interesting projects without his income or livelihood depending on it. Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Dude, I'm extremely impressed. That's some good research there.
Thank you.
Things I forgot about.
I know that was a long intro, but there's so many interesting things that have happened, over the course of your mountain biking career that I couldn't leave out.
No, man, it's been awesome, and I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, it's been a long time coming. We've been bouncing messages back and forth, and I feel like my list of questions and just kind of topics bouncing around in the back of my mind has just grown, exploded. So super excited to be making this happen today.
See if we can narrow it down to a few answers that make sense.
Totally. I think really interesting place to start with would just be let's talk about your day today. You've been up to some pretty wild stuff with Johan there.
Yeah. Today, I guess the video will have come out by the time we do this, but Johan and I just became official teammates with Da Vinci, which is pretty much a dream come true. One of my favorite guys to ride with an amazing company that I just re-signed with, and now it's just fun. We just now get to go out, make a few bucks, produce some amazing stuff, and ride together. So today was day one that we shot together, and I'm not even coming off, my ankle's actually still injured. I have a grade 2 ankle sprain from something stupid I did, and then I worked night shift last night. But the two of us together, it's just so much fun, and I just can't turn it off. We just progress, push, had a few spicy moments, but it was a sick day. We got away with a few things, but yeah, I had a blast, and that's purely what mountain biking is to me.
Yeah,
just have fun.
I can see the passion when you're talking about it, and you just got out of your truck. You're like, oh man, I did some crazy shit today.
It's actually maybe the podcast will get a little bit smoother with speaking as time goes down, but I just came from almost dying, and now it's the heart is coming down, the adrenaline, so I'll find my words.
Totally, man, totally. You're doing great so far. And tell me, what is it about mountain biking that you love so much?
I actually just got asked that question the other day. And it's definitely something that's evolved for me over the years. As a kid, it was almost seeking out just the most death-defying, get the adrenaline rush, which is still something that I really enjoy. But hands down right now, it's there's just an escape from reality where when I bike, there is nothing else that I can think of. And I think I share that with a lot of people. I feel that's a really common answer, but it's so true.
Yeah.
When I go biking, I love it so much, and I'm out in nature, I'm with my friends, I'm pushing, progressing. There's no limit to progression. and like it's limitless, and that just brings me back, and I don't think I'll ever stop.
Do you feel like you have to be riding gnarly stuff to be able to get into that zone where nothing else drifts into your mind and you're purely focused, or is it just riding bikes for you?
Less and less. I'm evolving as well. A couple crashes, like the crash that I had a little while ago, has really changed like where I find my enjoyment. Like I love to get gnarly, but it actually takes a little more out of me now to get there. And whereas before when I'd ride gnarly stuff, I didn't, that like the feelings of doubt never even came into my mind. And now they do. But I can still push through them, and I love that. But like I just love to go riding. I'm actually e-biking a ton right now, and as soon as like my helmet's on, I'm out the door and I start pedaling up towards Frome. Like sometimes I'll just like have like a big smile and I'll like laugh and just be like, this is sick. And I'm so happy, and I could be having the worst day ever where I'm like, nothing can improve my day. Like I'm not having a good day, and it's like gone. And that's the best.
It's amazing, isn't it? The power of bikes.
Yeah. And I mean, everyone's got their thing, and for me, it's fully bikes, and it does it for me, and I love it.
That's so awesome, man. I'd love to wind the clock back a little bit to start here and talk about some of your early influences. I know I've kind of heard you talk about your dad a lot.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit like about what it was like growing up with your dad and the influence he had on you?
Yeah, my dad is a crazy, crazy man. Like I feel like we would have got along great if we were the same age going through life. But he grew up in Lynn Valley. He was into cliff jumping, like dirt biking, lighting things on fire, jumping over fire. Like he always tells me these crazy stories. Like he was a loose unit, and that when he raised me, we did a lot of those things. Like he'd strap me to his motorcycle. He'd build jumps for me. He'd send me down the canyon. I'd be jumping off cliffs into like 60 feet as like a tiny little kid. And that really instilled like an enjoyment for those type of things, but also just how to analyze risk and do these things safely. But my dad was so supportive. He'd drive me all over BC. Like Williams Lake was kind of our favorite place. We'd go camping there, and he would shuttle me all day.
Wow.
Like kind of reminds me of like Stevie Smith and his mom. Like when you watch that video and you just see her taking him up and up, like my dad would do that for me. He's like, you want to ride for 8 hours today? We'll shuttle you all day, just up and down, up and down, up and down. And yeah, like that, I don't think I even realized it in the moment how amazing it was and like the sacrifices he made for me. But now, like, best memories ever.
Totally, man. That sounds like such a cool way to grow up, and such a cool place to grow up too. There in Lynn Valley, just surrounded by the environment.
It's crazy. Yeah,
that's like perfect for adventures like that. And I guess your dad was doing all of these things just for the pure love of it, because he wanted to, because he found it fun. Like there was no social media or YouTube videos or any other reasons to do it back then.
Yeah, he was just doing it because that's what I wanted to do. It's just selfless way of living, raise your son. And yeah, like I said, I don't think it hit me in the moment because I was a tiny little kid. But now that I think about it, and even more now, it's like, yeah, it was awesome. He would do anything, drive as far as I wanted, take me anywhere I wanted. You know, we didn't have a ton of money, so I didn't just get bikes bought for me. I had to work at the bakery for my bikes, which was good. Get some work ethic driven into you.
Totally.
But yeah, both my parents were super supportive.
How would you describe his attitude towards risk?
I mean, it's funny to think about. My mom would always hate watching me do these things, and my dad never even showed any concern. Like I would do really dumb, sketchy things, and he was like, yeah, go for it. Like, I think I've told this story before on a different podcast, but I remember I was riding the bike park one day. I was still in high school, and I'd heard that there was a 30 by 30 foot road gap in Pemberton over the Mackenzie Forest Service Road. It still kind of stands there if you go look for it. But he went and found it while I was riding bike park, and he picks me up from the park, and he's like, hey, I found the road gap. You want to go see it? Okay, so like load my bike in the back, and we drove up to Pemberton. There it was massive. Like we measured it. It was 30 down, 30 out. And I'm like, I had never hit anything like it, but I'm like, oh, I'm going to hit it. And he wasn't like, ooh, I don't know. He's like, yeah, go for it. Like I could have been so mangled, and I think I did crash, but at one point. But I don't know, he just trusted me. He's like, okay, you got it. I trust you. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, kind of actually disturbing when I think about it, but I don't know. He trusted that if I thought I could do it, he didn't say anything in the way to make me think otherwise.
And it sounds like it worked most of the time. Is there any big moments you can think of, like looking back, where you're like, oh, Dad?
Well, I mean, I did break my
wrists
wrists on the second time I hit that road gap that day.
Okay.
Like I made it the first time, and then I just Superman and ejected over the bike and ended up like not like badly breaking them, but they were like both kind of fractured. So I was going in school with 2 casts, which wasn't that awesome.
Both wrists at the same time must have been
Yeah, it was
brutal.
But it was awful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've taken a lot of learnings out of that upbringing, both like from the good and the bad that happened in like pursuing this kind of thing from such a young age.
Yeah.
I'd love to kind of fast forward to present day. I know lots has happened for you in the last couple of years, and you've taken lots of learnings out of it. Take us back to 2022. You were there riding pretty hard into the gnar. 2022 is what I'm thinking of, riding one of your own features there, and it was kind of a crash that led to this whole journey of recovery for you.
Yeah, that was an interesting day, I think, and really shifted how I approach risk and everything, and not what I value, but just moving forward, the side of me that I want to display. And I think like that day, I wasn't feeling as strong on the bike, and I was a little bit nervous about taking that many people to that line, because at the time it'd only been me, Johan, and Remy that had done that line, and I think all of us are quite good at braking control. Like it kind of checks the boxes for a line that is catered towards our riding style. So we went with a bunch of riders from all over the world that all talented in their own way, but not necessarily that wasn't their bread and butter. So I think I had like a moment of, oh man, like I'm gonna watch a bunch of people go off this thing that may not necessarily be ready. And I kind of freaked out a bit, and I ended up hitting it like too fast and just not as in control as I normally would, and then I exploded myself. But I think there was a bunch of red flags that I just ignored.
Yeah.
Didn't sleep. It's a little more people than I was like comfortable riding around. Like I do actually prefer smaller groups of people to ride with, and I just didn't listen to it, and then it bit me. But I think I can't predict this for sure, but I think that there may have been a couple riders there that might not have been in their wheelhouse, just for how specific it was to our terrain. So the fact that I blew up, everyone left, and no one else hit it that day. So who knows what would have happened?
Maybe I took the bullet.
Maybe I took a bullet. Maybe everyone would have been totally fine, and it was just me that sucks. But I don't know. And then moving forward, I've made a few just shifts to make sure that I'm following my values and my risk assessment, and
yeah, so it sounds like obviously like horrible experience for you, and I know it lasted. It wasn't just like, a couple of broken ribs and you're back. It lasted like ongoing concussion symptoms.
Yeah.
Dealing with broken bones, even just dealing with like, I guess that weighing up in your head, like, do I want to be doing this stuff anymore? Where to from here?
100%, that's all true. Like that really weighed on me, and those were all things that I thought about.
Yeah, so this kind of a hard year for you, right? Kind of coming back, but it seems like you've kind of worked through a lot of things and had a lot of change, but you're in a better place now because of it.
Totally. Yeah, I think I've got spat out the other end a bit different. Definitely not as like loose, and definitely way more thinking about consequences. That like I just don't think you can have big crashes and come back and not think about those things. So, and it's hard because I'm a firm believer that if you can't clear all the feelings of doubt out of your mind and drop into a line, then you will never ride as loose and controlled and comfortably as you could. So for me, it's tough because I look at these lines and I'm like, I got it, I'm good. But no matter what, there's always like, oh man, like you could get mangled again, and then you're off work, and then you're injured and you can't ride, and I have to push them out. But I still feel like there's a percentage of me that I'm not back to riding at the same level I was before, just because I have a bit more reservation. So I'm like, I'm not as loose and kicking it out, and I think that just comes with a bit of age and experience.
Totally.
And it's something I'm continually working through, but I'm just making sure that I'm doing it because I want to. I'm not like desperate to get the old version of myself back. I'm just doing it because I want to.
Yeah, such a sound attitude. I feel like I can relate in my own level, in my own riding. I feel like time works both positive and negatively. Like, in the times that are quite near to say a big setback, a big crash, or even just a sketchy moment, I'm so much more tentative and so much more likely to have doubt or think of the consequences.
Totally.
Whereas if I haven't had a crash all season, it's almost like that confidence just compounds and compounds. And I'm thinking of the consequences less and less and less, which isn't necessarily a good thing, a safe thing, but it happens with time, right?
I think it can be both for sure. Like you can get cocky and get hurt that way, but also like you're riding, if you're that confident, your riding is better than ever. And even if you make a mistake, you're going to correct that mistake a lot better because you're just fully committed. Like you coach, and I enjoyed unofficially coaching and mentoring, and I found the mental side of it, which is so cool that you're diving into this. The mental side is bigger than anybody really realizes, and your riding can improve so much with like being in the right headspace, mental coaching, tricks, and like knowing yourself and not allowing yourself to maybe progress too quickly, but just make sure you're doing the steps.
Totally. Yeah, I love how you framed that. It's definitely a sweet spot where like confidence is in line with ability, right?
Yeah.
Rather than being way higher or way lower, we get into trouble at either end, right?
Totally. And yeah, I think I can't just tell a kid that's riding so gnarly and loose to be like, hey man, like be careful, like slow down, because they're not going to listen to me until their own crash or learning experience hits them.
Yeah.
I can't tell them.
As harsh as that is, sometimes the lived experience is what's necessary, right? I'm
yeah.
sure we can all relate on some level there.
Yeah, and I'm just super transparent about it now, and I'm willing to share what I can, and
yeah,
maybe it'll help some or maybe not, but...
I'm sure you remember saying this. You said, I will never ride that line again.
Yeah, I did say that. I said I would never do it again.
It's all over the internet. So I'd love to dive in here. Like, what has changed? What have you learned in the year since to be at a stage now where you went back and rode it for yours and Kelsey's film in Dirt Diaries there?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I have a good answer for it, because I wasn't just saying that. I said I'd never ride it again. Like, I've done it enough times, I've escaped death, and I don't want to ride it again. Like, it's so... I'll have to show it to you in person sometime if you haven't seen it.
I'd love to.
It's just like right on the edge of a cliff, and if you screw up, you're going to die 100%. Like, there's not like a... I don't know. It's just... It's
zero margin for error.
So yeah, I believe it, and I said I wouldn't do it again, and I wasn't ever trying to build myself up to it. So throughout that year, I was super focused on just slowly building up my riding at no rush, like the bigger jumps, a bit steeper, a bit more speed, and things, because I was not pushing it, they were just naturally happening. I was just ticking it, feeling better, tuning my bike back, getting faster, not filming, just having fun laps. And then my riding just started improving. And then one day I was actually showing the guys from We Are One Composites. They're like, can we see your line? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. Like, we deviated off the trail, and I went to show them it, and I showed it to them, and they were all like, whoa, that's like cool. Like, thanks for showing us. And as I was looking at it, I was like, this doesn't scare me. And I called Kelsey right after. I'm like, that doesn't scare me anymore. I'm like, I walked up and I looked at it and I had zero fear. Like, I wasn't even remotely, I was like, no, I got it for 100%. I'm like, let's film it next week and put it in our Dirt Diaries. And she's like, okay. And I think that's, I never intended for that to happen, but just naturally my riding got up to the point where it just didn't scare me anymore.
That's
and I
amazing.
felt 100% confident. I mean, that changed when we went there a few days later and I actually had to do it. Of course, I was like terrified, but yeah, that was cool.
It's amazing, isn't it? I think like homage to like going back to your skills, riding stuff that you're comfortable with, having fun with it. People can learn from that in their own riding. Like, that's how you come back from a setback.
Yeah, and that actually I had that question asked to me so many times, and I've really enjoyed sharing that with people. They're like, how do you come back from an injury? Like, I'm struggling with this. Like, just back to the basics, change your expectations of yourself, and just have fun. Like, did you used to hit 15-foot drops? Go do 7.5-foot drops or less, and like comfortable. And I think the biggest one, and I'm sure you say this when you're coaching, is don't ever go off of a drop or anything unless you want to go off of it. And that's been a big thing for me. Like, if I'm coming to the edge of a drop and if you're in a reservation, it's not right. But if you're coming to the edge and you're like, oh man, I want to release the brakes, I want to fly, like I want to feel this, I'm like, you're in the right headspace.
Totally.
Up until you hit that, don't do it.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there about like, it's got to come from internal reasons, intrinsic, right? Motivation, rather than being like, I want to do it because we're out with the cameras, or because this will look sick, or because like, get more views on Instagram, or get a new sponsorship deal. It sounds like you, that day when you happened to be at that line, you're like, hey, I really want to do this again.
Yeah, and I really did. And even today, like we went and did this big drop that Hansa built in Valley Cliff, and I looked at it the first time today, and I was like a little bit nervous. And I was like, oh man, I don't even know if I really want to go off that. It's all blind and spooky. And then we went up to the top of the line and we were going to top to bottom it. And it was like 4 moves later down the trail. And by the time I got to it, I was like, no, I want to go off this. And I remember today, I released the brakes way far back, preloaded perfectly. And I was like, I'm so excited to fly off this and feel that. And I was like loose and comfortable. And that's important.
Hell yeah.
But if you're doing it any other way and you're like fully terrified, eventually it's not going to go well.
Yeah, I often say that to people as well. It's like you might get away with it for so many drops for so long. But if you're doing things from a place of fear, you've got doubt, you've got reservations in your mind, eventually it's going to bite you.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk here. I had Kelsey on the previous episode of this podcast. If you haven't listened to it yet, go and check that one out straight after this. We dove deep into her perspective of like what it's like to be watching you do these death-defying things.
I'm so excited to hear that.
Yeah, I can't wait for you to hear it as well, man. Honestly, yeah, it hasn't come out yet.
What does she actually think?
Exactly. It was all good, don't worry. But yeah, we talked about her perspective, what it was like watching you through the lens do these things. But I'd love to know for you, obviously there's a lot of emotion, a lot of different thoughts that I imagine come into your mind when you had this crash that must have been so tough for you, but also on her as well.
Yeah.
She was there, she's seen it happen, and then you're there, back there together. What's it like for you as you're about to drop in and you're like, oh man, like Kelsey's sitting down the bottom again, like.
Yeah, that weighed heavy on me. And I remember sitting at the top before I yelled drop in, being like, okay, your legs are both working right now and you're walking and you're not dead. Why are you doing this again? Like you could just not do this and then you would not risk this. I'm like, and I'm putting Kelsey through it. Like the poor girl had to see this already. But I think she read me and I read her, and I'm not sure what she said in the podcast, but she's really good at knowing when I'm actually fully confident and going to hit a feature, and she just doesn't say anything. She doesn't like give me a kiss like it's the last kiss we're ever going to ever do. She doesn't like, she's like, you good? I'm like, I'm good. And then our little communication without speaking, she knows and I know, and then kind of all fear and doubt is gone. I don't feel like I'm putting her through like hell and unnecessary stress. I'm like, she knows I'm good. I'm as good as I can be. For sure, there's always the chance of a little bit of risk here, but yeah, and she'll see it in me. There's times where I'm not really feeling it, and I can tell in her body English that she doesn't really want me to hit it, and then we'll cut it. Today's not the day.
Right. So you'll make the call.
We did that a lot actually in the Dirt Diaries video. I walked away from a few things in cam loops, like I was doing run-ins on these big blind step downs, and she would make a comment like, are you sure? And I'm like, she knows that I'm not riding properly, and then I'm doing things that aren't like me, and then I'll call it.
It must be amazing having that synergy and working so well together. It almost sounds like she's like the eyes in the back of your head, or like the wise voice in the back of your mind that's like, hey Steve, maybe not today.
Yeah, it's good. And like, I hope I get this right. We've been together for 16 years, I think.
Yeah,
maybe
that's fair.
I'm pretty sure it's 16 years. So yeah, we've been able to develop that, and it's awesome. Like,
and sounds like it works the other way too with confidence. You're like, if Kelsey's not saying anything, you're like, right, she believes in me. She knows I can do this.
It really does.
I can do this.
And crazy when I'm not sure what she said about me going back and hitting that feature, but she didn't show any fear. She's like, I know you're good. I know that you wouldn't have said you're good if you weren't.
Yep.
So that gave me so much confidence, and I felt so good. And yeah, I really haven't crashed that many times in front of her. But yeah, when I do, it almost like it kind of resets, and we got to find our ground again.
Okay. Yeah.
Like if I blow myself up bad, like she hates seeing it, and yeah, then I'll almost dial it back. Let's go film some chill stuff. Let's go shoot some berms and speed for bit and get our working relationship back again, so that you can press record and not think that I'm gonna, you're gonna film your husband die.
Totally. Yeah. So understandable. Like it amazes me how well you both work together.
Thanks, man.
And especially just like considering like what the work is.
It's really fun, and I am so happy at where we're at right now. Like that Dirt Diaries video brought crazy opportunities for Kelsey, like the opportunity to go shoot with Anthill and Red Bull, to me the most prestigious people you could shoot with.
Absolutely.
And seeing her go off, like guys were like, oh, like do you feel like you're getting left behind, or like you're done now? I'm like, no man, this is what we've been working for. Like I wanted her to get this, and I feel like she has more longevity in the game shooting than I do putting my life at risk because I'm only getting older, but she can do that for a long time.
Yeah, it's been amazing seeing how you've both like been able to help each other boost each other's careers while also working together and having loads of fun along the way.
It's fun.
It's a perfect synergy. Yeah,
it's well said. I always got to bring it back to that. It's fun, and we've said it time and time again, is I would not do it if it wasn't fun, and that comes down to any of the sponsorship agreements that I sign or anything I do. I'm like, I'm doing it because it's fun, and if we can hop on this ride together and have some fun and I can provide value for you, then that's amazing. But it's just fun. I don't want biking to be like work, except that I actually do enjoy the work side of it. Like, I'm really enjoying this sort of sponsored life. It's fun.
yeah,
It's like a different challenge, and you know, I've only aligned with brands that are great to work with, and I'm like, love sharing the product. I'm like, these bikes are sick. This stuff is sick. It's sick.
It's an interesting position you're in. Like, there's not many mountain bikers that hold like a full-time career, especially one that's as full on and stressful and takes as much out of you as yours does. But do you find that's what's able, like, you're able to choose the fun work and choose the sponsors you like? Is that what makes it fun for you?
100%. Yeah, there's no desperate picks at the end of the year, just making sure that I have this amount of money to cover these bills. And I'm not speaking poorly about anyone, like, for people that do riding as a full time, like, that's a lot of work, man.
Sure.
They are really having to do a lot of work. But yeah, like, I pick and choose the ones that I want to ride with gear that I truly love. And then when I promote it, it's like, I feel comfortable knowing that I'm promoting product that I otherwise would have run. Like, almost everything I'm riding now is like stuff that I rode before I ever had support from them.
Right, so stuff you used to pay for, and you're like, I would legitimately
and then
buy
like,
this.
you know, either like maybe I'd reach out to them or they'd reach out to me being like, hey, I saw you're on our We Are One composite wheels. Like, maybe we could have an agreement. I'm like, yeah, these are amazing. I would run these regardless, but if you want to work together, then sure.
That's fantastic, man. Yeah, so like hard work kind of comes full circle, and then
That's weird. I never planned for this to happen, but I'm gonna enjoy it.
absolutely,
While
man.
while it lasts.
Yeah, well, that's a question for later on. Talking about what's next, but I'd love to dive in. It's a bit of a heavier subject, but I think a really important one that the listeners can get a lot out of. Part of that crash, you suffered a concussion, long-lasting symptoms, and I take it did some really hard, deep work there.
Definitely. Yeah.
I'd love to talk about that process, perhaps just starting with like, what was the experience through your lens, and then what were some of the learnings you took out of it?
Yeah, I think physical injuries that heal quickly, like the ribs and the sternum and the collarbone and the punctured lung and wrists and ankle and all the things that kind of came with that, are whatever. But I found like the concussion stuff, I only started paying attention to about 6 weeks after, when the other stuff had healed. And I'm like, I'm still super dizzy. I'm out of it. I can't form sentences. I get frustrated and anxious. And that was new to me, and I didn't really clue into what it was up until that point. I'm like, okay. And then I started seeing some professionals about it and seeking some help. And, you know, it was like a double head hit. Like, I hit my head, which caused me to lose consciousness, and then I hit my head again. So it was kind of like a thunk, which I think.
In the same crash?
In the same crash, yeah. It was like, if you see the video, it's back of the head, or maybe it's side of the head and then back of the head after. So that put the lights out. And yeah, it was just, it was hard. Like, I was also kind of in like 10 years into the job at the fire hall, and some of the calls that I've been on were weighing heavy on me. The injury, being off, having my confidence shook, and then feeling like completely scrambled eggs up in my brain was very like identity losing. Like, I feel like that's been hard to claw back from.
You kind of talked about this before we got into the podcast. You were kind of saying everyone at the fire hall, and I'm sure everyone in the mountain biking world too, kind of had this perception of Steve as like this, super gnarly dude who can do anything. He works night shifts and then goes and sends features at daytime.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, how was that for you, kind of having to take some time back, take a step back and be different for a little while?
It was interesting. It was something I never thought I'd do. I remember being hired and guys are like, there's programs in place that if you ever need to take time off, you can. And I was like, I'm good. This stuff doesn't bother me. I'm fine. Like, I can handle anything that life throws at me. And I have no idea what people's perception of me are, but I think I tried to put out the perception that I was kind of tough or whatever. And but yeah, I think that injury plus just my confidence being shook, and just generally getting kind of older and feeling more pain. And then some of the calls that we deal with are, you know, overdoses. Suicides are always really horrible to see. Traumatic car accidents, fires, like fatalities in there. And it was a cumulative effect for me. There was just bad call after bad call after bad call. And then one day, you know, I was feeling kind of sick myself. Like I've had like pretty gnarly gut health stuff, and just all those things kind of came to a head. And I walked into work one day and I was like, no, something's really not right here. And I walked into the chief's office. I'm like, I'm leaving. I got to book off. And I booked off for 2 months. And I just did my best to try to press reset, and just be vulnerable and chat with a lot of people. And yeah, it was vulnerable, but good. It was like one of the better things I'd done.
Thank you for taking the time in and being open to talk about this stuff. I know it's not an easy subject to talk about.
So yeah, it's a tough. You know, people don't really want to talk about it.
I think it's really important for the listeners. Like we all go through hard times on our own levels with different things in life, and it's cool to be able to sit here with you today and sit with someone who's like, yeah, like I took some time for myself.
Yeah.
I talked to the right people. I did the work. So I'd love to next like talk about potentially like some of the tools or some of the things you learned, and maybe some of like the tipping points or different moments that really helped in your journey of recovery there.
Yeah, I think like as we actually mentioned before the podcast here, was learning that, you know, as life goes on, more and more things pile on, and to not strive for perfection, because you know, people say you fix one thing, two more things are broken, or you do one thing, like you're never going to erase that checklist in your mind of things you have to do, or things that are necessarily wrong with you, or your struggles. Like you're always going to have a few struggles churning around that are just things you deal with. So acknowledging and accepting that life is a process, and that you just have to keep working on those things, and create a good support network, and realize that a lot of people have the same issues with you. So I ended up reaching out and chatting with some good mentors and people, and you know, I'd start telling about like calls that bothered me or things, or like, you know, struggles I had with my own confidence or my own like issues with my own image or things. And people were like, oh yeah, man, I feel that too. I was like, you do? It's not just me? They're like, no, man, I feel that too. I was like, okay, like that's good to know. Like I'm not alone here.
Totally.
And like you said, normalizing it. Everybody, even the most confident people you see, 100%, there's something that they're self-conscious of, and
definitely
something bothering them. And yeah, that was, for me, the tool was just acceptance. Perfection is not ever going to be attained. Life is a journey, and you're always going to be working on these things. And to reach out early, to create a good support network, and you really aren't alone. There's a lot of people that have those issues.
Yeah, dude, such wise advice.
I don't know.
Talk about lived experience, like the same thing with biking, right? Lived experience in the mental world just leads to, I guess, such a deep understanding of how to go about approaching, you know, some pretty gnarly stuff in life, whether it be on the bike or off.
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd do different next time if, God forbid, there's ever another tough moment in your life, like knowing what you know now, like what would your process or like that checklist be?
Yeah, I think would be to not just keep pushing through everything else in your life. Something I've kind of had to work on is pressing pause and stopping, and also listing some of the things in my life that are causing me stress, and then prioritizing which ones are the biggest ones, and then also, you know, eliminating some of the things that I can in the moment. Like, for example, when I had my gut health and the fire hall and all these stressful things, I was like, okay, I can't handle this all. This is too much. I'm breaking. What's something that I can remove? And I'm like, well, the fire hall has a program for me. Boom. I'm gonna take some time off work, kick that one out, and now I'm only focusing on 2 other things. And that helped me to, you know, actually focus on those things. Because at the moment, I couldn't show up to work. I couldn't go biking and produce videos. I couldn't be like sick every single day with no energy and, you know, just dying. what I thought was dying.
Or feeling like you're dying. Yeah, you can't do anything you love. Yeah.
And so yeah, it was like press pause, acknowledge, and you know, reach out.
Yeah.
And reach out to people that people want, not everyone, and don't share. I'm a firm believer that you just shouldn't just necessarily share with everyone, because it's hard for some people. Like if I just like, someone's like, hey, how you doing today? I'm like, well, actually, this. If I just unloaded everything I told you there, they'd be like, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's actually annoying to hear that, because it might, but
not super helpful on either side. But there's a time and a place, right?
Pick the people and hold those people close, build the relationships, and yeah, that's where I'm at and what I've learned so far.
Advice. And like, what are some of the ways that you personally like to slow down and press pause?
I'm really bad at that. Like I'm pretty ADD, OCD. Like I never stop moving, and I really like all my ducks to be in a row. I want my bike to be perfect, running perfect, my truck, my health. Like I want things to run good, and I strive for that. And it's an impossible standard that will never be achieved. But so I love to do saunas and just sit there and like actually chill. Pedaling is a huge one. Trying to get adequate rest. And honestly, I found crazy advantages, and this seems so simple, but like eating super healthy, and I cut out booze for a year. Most people are like, I could never cut out booze. I'm like, well, you can, and it might not be a bad thing to try. And I just found like booze was kind of a coping mechanism for me. It was so easy to have a bit of stress. Crush 3 beers, stress is gone. Amazing. That's crazy. And I was using that more and more with the fire hall, coming back from bad calls and just crushing beers. And as soon as I'm 3 beers deep, that problem is no longer a problem until tomorrow when I wake up with the same problem and a headache. And yeah, I just decided that I was going to spend a year just off booze and focusing on eating really healthy and just, you know, nourishing the body, and seeing like you can't put bad gas in your vehicle and expect it to run well. So I was like, let's spend a year to see how much I can heal and how good I can actually make this machine run.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work. It's so much work to cut out all these things, but it was cool.
Dude, hats off to you, because yeah, like you say, not an easy process to go down.
Yeah.
It takes discipline, it takes courage to go and do that. And even just in a social setting, I'm sitting here having a beer today, offered you one. It takes courage to be like, oh, you know what, I'm good for today, because my body's going to feel better for it. I
would have done it, but I unfortunately in my 2-month journey discovered that I'm super allergic to gluten, which sucks because my dad owned a bakery. So I just can't.
But it's great that you have figured that out.
Yeah.
And you now like respect that. You respect your body. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
super cool to see.
And I think I'm not someone who pushes or judges anybody. Like if you can crush beers and balance it and eat whatever you want and you feel great, so stoked for you. That's so sick. For me, I didn't. I started to like slip a bit. So I had to make the decision to do that. And that was just for me. But everyone's got their thing.
Totally, man. Yeah, so stoked you ended up down this road. Thank you so much for diving into some of the heavier stuff here.
Oh, dude, absolutely.
I'd love to talk a little bit here. I know everyone's dying to hear about some of the mental tools, some of the processes that you use to perform at such a high level on a mountain bike. So let's talk about that. Wide open question at the start. What are some mental tools and some techniques that you've picked up along the way that help you when you're mountain biking?
I think we did actually touch a little bit on one of them, but I still think number one is the mental side of things. And I think that if you can visualize yourself going off something and that you want to go off it, and that your feelings are not just like reservation and like, I hope this goes well, but instead they're like, no, I know this is going to go well because I am dialed and I can't wait to throw my wheel off the end of that you're going to probably be successful, because you can take all the variables. If your front wheel slips, you're in a great body position, you're confident, you can correct, your head's up, you're looking at the line. And that's been huge for me, the mental side. And also be okay that not every day is going to be a day that you're on your A game. Fortunately, today I showed up with Johan. First lap in, I'm like, I'm riding great. I'm riding like so good today. Let's do this. Let's top to bottom this line. But there are days where I've hopped in. I'm like, I suck. I can't ride. And to recognize that and to either like take a few steps back and work on some more chill things that day, or just call it.
Totally.
Like, I'm not feeling it today. That's a huge tool for me.
Yeah, it takes courage to be able to be like, hey, today's not the day, especially if there's cameras involved or you've got this pre-planned ride with a buddy.
Yeah. And I think another thing is gnarly stuff is just like sometimes just a accumulation of like small little skills that you can pick up without any risk. Like go practice some corners, like slapping corners, being fast and loose on sections, because a lot of times it's not the actual drop that's gnarly, it's your run out after that you're hitting at speed. So go work on that skill, riding steeps at speed and corners and looking up and tuning your suspension, tuning your bike, trusting your bike, and it all is going to come together. And yeah, those are some tools that have really helped me.
Yeah, so true. And that's such a good process or good way of getting better and ensuring that the gnarly stuff goes well without having to do the gnarly thing 20 times in a day and take that risk 20 times. So talking about the visualization there, it sounds like you've got a really specific process that you will visualize yourself riding a line.
Yeah.
It sounds a little bit to me almost like you're feeling how you're going to feel on the bike and you're like, yeah, I really want to ride this, I'm stoked.
I try to see if I can get what I think the feeling will be of, like, I'm almost doing it in my mind and before I'm actually doing it. So when it comes to it, I'm like, I've already done it.
Yeah, so your mind's a little bit quieter, a little bit more relaxed because you've already played out that scene in your mind.
Yeah.
So interesting. You're not the first person that said this on the podcast.
Yeah, it works. Yeah,
I love the idea. Do you find that process of visualizing and like, yeah, getting stoked to do this drop or whatever it is you're doing, do you find that builds your energy levels up a little bit as well?
It definitely does. It gets you where you need to be. It warms you up. It gets your brain lubed up and ready to do the thing that you have to do. And yeah, you're just anticipating the things coming up. I think it's a balance. You see some people that are just loose as heck, like they don't check anything, they're just winging it. Works for them sometimes. And you see the other people that do 20 run-ins. I give myself 2 to 3 run-ins, and that's it. Yeah. If I can't figure it out within 2 to 3 run-ins, it's like my indicator that there's too many variables that I think can go wrong, and the risk is not worth taking for me that day.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Hey, I feel like the amount of run-ins or time spent at the top of a feature is like such a common topic, and like at the dumpsters any given weekend, people be there like talking about.
Yeah, man. Like sometimes you can just run, and then they like finally go for it 15 later and blow up. You're like, well, you obviously had something blocking you from doing it.
Totally. I think of it a little bit like mental interference. Sometimes there's like other, like thoughts or doubt or fear that seeps in. I'm curious, what do you do during that visualization process? Say if perhaps all of a sudden you find yourself visualizing like what could go wrong. Mm-hmm. Do you have any ways of kind of kicking yourself out of that back to like that line of success?
Yeah, actually I have a few ways, like shooting the one I call Spicy Fly, which is one of the things I built on the North Shore, and it's probably 22, 3, whatever foot drop, hipped, super gnarly. If you screw it up and you hit a tree, like you're gonna be paralyzed or dead.
That's the one in Ready or Not, a bunch of other films.
Yeah, it's the intro to it, the first one. So yeah, when I was shooting that last, which I think I was doing it with Remy, or maybe just the video, and I got to the top and I was quite cold, because when you're filming's hard, because when you're sessioning with your buddies, you're warm and you're flowing, and when you're shooting, it's just the filmer and you have to like generate this false stoke or this false vibe, because there is no vibe. It's just you riding. And I was up there and I just like visualized myself smacking a tree and breaking every bone in my body. And I was just about to hit hit the mic up and be like, yeah, ready to go. And I just have to calm myself down, but just told myself, I'm like, you've done this a lot of times. You do have the skills. Don't think about this. It's not going to happen. And yeah, I just pushed it out of my thought.
Yeah, so positive self-talk, affirmations, almost like filling up your mind with that instead of having space for other things.
Totally. And everything's risky. Like even chill rolls in Garanga or In-N-Out Burger, you could be super hurt.
Absolutely.
So I think I try to normalize that a bit. I'm like, this has risk, but you're okay.
Yeah.
Like you're fine.
And isn't it that just reminded me like amazing what becomes chill with time and with experience? For a lot of people listening, that might be like the gnarliest thing they've ever rode, or like the thing that they hope to be able to ride one day. And you're like,
Yeah, and it's
like really chill for you. And it happens on different levels. I see in every rider's perspective, like stuff that used to be like really challenging, really risky becomes easy with
totally.
time.
It's funny, you see Johan say it all the time with his coaching. Now, I may butcher this and say it wrong, but I think he says more gnar for more gnar or more gnar for less gnar, and it just means like continue to build up and ride in this zone, and then things will become less gnarly.
Totally. Yeah. There's a sweet spot, isn't there? Like that fun zone.
Yeah.
And that moves. It's not a static spot. Yeah.
Totally.
So I see a lot of riders, like you were saying earlier, kind of like amping themselves up, listening to music, chugging Red Bulls, whatever it is. Maybe perhaps more in the old days. But for you, when I watch you in the videos, kind of writing some of these insane lines, it seems almost like you calm yourself down and you almost like go really quiet and inward right when you're ready to hit
It
this
freaks
stuff.
people out, actually. I think some people that have come and watched me film before have, because when I'm really scared or in the zone, I get silent, like super silent, and I try to slow my breathing down and be just like hyper focused. And I find that, like, you know, there are times like when I'm backflipping big step downs, I'll be honest with you, I don't really like metal, but I listen to metal. I'm like, I put on some gnarly music and I'm like, wow, like, cause you kind of need that to do a big step down flip, because like when you're at a technical line, your wheels are on the ground, you can see everything coming. When you're flipping, you can't see anything for a lot of times. It's definitely a bit of a pull and pray. And at that point, I'm like, that's when I'll get myself amped up. You know, it's like a couple push-ups, put the music on, feel it, think about like a video part that you love, watching a guy do it, and then visualize success and go for it. But it's usually like a big pull. But for the most part, I'm like deep breathing, focus, and feel the pulse come down. Like, I don't even feel your pulse. You're like, oh yeah, it's dipping. This is good. And then drop in.
That's so interesting. So you're feeling like, yeah, like that nervous system activation.
It's cool, yeah.
Some days you're ramping yourself up with the metal music, with push-ups.
Yeah, dude.
And then other days you're breathing and feeling your pulse. That's such a good way of actually feeling like, where's my physiological state at?
It's cool. And I'm gonna dive into a couple tangents here, but like even sleeping, like I've had issues sleeping in the past, and like I've looked up like hacks to better sleeping, and it's like breathing techniques and like breathe in, pause, breathe out, and you can feel your pulse and you can like feel yourself as your body is just like coming down. And it's pretty cool. And it's something I've learned, and this is cool to relate to the fire hall, is when I first got hired, you're so jacked up, you're under the microscope, you go to calls, and you're not really thinking clearly because your pulse is pinned. Like you go into a structure fire, flames are showing, and you're like, oh, this is gnarly. And you can perform, but you're not necessarily like information in, action out the most smooth. But now that I've been there like 11 years, like as I'm coming to these, I'm breathing slow, like calm. I slow myself down, and even when I'm grabbing a hose line or advancing towards the fire, we don't get tons of fires. I'm not trying to make it sound like that, but I'm telling myself, I'm like, breathe, calm down, relax. Like you're only gonna perform worse if you let yourself get stressed. And I can feel my like pulse, like everything dropping and chilling, and it's cool.
Yeah, it's so cool to hear the relation between your work at the fire hall and then mountain biking as well. That was one of the subjects I wanted to dive into. Like, what have you learned from the fire hall that's helped mountain biking, and then what have you learned mountain biking that's helped at work?
Yeah, and that is what I just said works for both ways. Like the biking that I've done and grown up in pretty like more extreme sports, more gnarly things, has helped me to be more okay with the fire hall when I'm in like rescues or rappelling off of cliffs or doing kind of more adrenaline filled things. And I'm like, this is a normal place for me to be. Like I like this, I know this place, like making decisions under like duress and stress. This feels normal. And then the fire hall is kind of the same way. Like when I go biking, I'll be honest with you, the fire hall is quite a safe place. Like I don't want to make it sound more than what it is. Like modern firefighting and modern safety protocols, we're not just running into things blindly. Like it's all the training, we're smart, but still like there's inherent risks.
But yeah, much like mountain biking, right? It sounds like it's safe. Like I don't want to put figures on it, but say most of the time it's safe. There's no gnarly calls, but when there is a gnarly call, it's incredibly risky. Yeah. Much like with mountain biking, we're safe most of the time.
Totally.
Except for that 5 seconds where you're hitting the drop that's on the trail or doing the gnarly move.
And I've found like if I can actually, it's really easy for your brain to get scattered on the job. Like there's big car accident. There's a car over there. There's a car over there. There's people screaming here. And you're like, wow, that's so much. Like, and to slow down your breathing and actually, because your brain can only take in so much and do so much, and eventually you just freeze and you don't do anything. So, slow down, like look at what you're doing, take each thing in, and then make a decision. And that works great for the biking too. Like if I was like listening to headbanging metal coming into Busted Ox Wound, that's basically what happened when I crashed. Like if you saw, I came in double the speed, nose manualed in, and I blew up. That was loose, and it just wasn't my style.
So like 2-amped.
2-amped, yeah.
And do you find, sorry to cut you off.
Oh, I'm just saying, I'm actually not a very competitive person, and I'm usually kind of chill. Like I have my process, and yeah.
Yeah, so you found a way of doing incredibly high consequence things in this chill place.
I don't actually think I'm that gnarly. I think I get like scared pretty easily, and guys are like, what do you mean just send it? I'm like, I don't want to just send it. I've just ridden my entire life.
I think
so. I'm just comfortable on these things.
A lot of the guys and girls I talk to on this podcast that are riding at such a high level and doing these crazy things, I feel like that's part of the longevity in the game for you, is because you're not taking undue risk, you're listening to your intuition.
Yeah.
And you consider yourself not an alley dude because you say no to things sometimes, right?
Yeah, you want to, you want to stay in it for a long time, then you got to eventually become smarter.
Yeah.
I mean, you can only get away with things for so long. But yeah, I think I want to keep doing this for as long as I can. I love it so much. It's so fun. So I will make the decisions that I have to keep riding another day.
Yeah, and that's such a good lead into something I've been dying to ask you. Like, where do you see yourself taking mountain biking? You were talking at the start there about like doing this as long as I can. Obviously, age is related to how we perform on the bike to some level.
Yeah.
Like, what do you see the future looking like for you on a mountain bike?
That's a great question. I think, yeah, I'm not a social media hater like some people are. I totally see how it is the new way for brands to market, and the only downside is there's just so much saturation. There's so many guys that ride at such an extremely high level, throwing out content that's like the equivalent of that like free entertainment video when they would come out like in the past, and there would be a banger, and like one video a year with that banger part, and you're like, oh, that was so insane. It's like stuff like that gets dropped every day, multiple times a day.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can feel like you gotta keep up, and you'll get buried really quickly. And that's okay. I just don't really want to play that game, because I'm aware that even the lines that I'm doing now that 3-4 years ago were considered like, whoa, that's really crazy, no one else has ridden them. People are all doing them now. And I try to not be ego driven, and I just want to be in it for fun. So who knows if I'll be able to ride, like put out video parts or ride gnarly stuff that really grabs the attention of people. So I think where I see my riding going, like I said, I want to put out a video this year that's like my version of gnarly. But I love mentoring, I love coaching, and I love helping basically everything that we've talked about with the process. I like sharing that with people that are receptive and watching their riding explode and seeing them have the same feelings of satisfaction. So I think coaching and mentoring is something I would love to do. And yeah, just riding. And I think there's one thing, like a lot of satisfaction in watching extremely gnarly, high quality riding, but there's also a lot of value in just watching a couple people out there riding, having fun. Like what Johan and I shot today, it was gnarly, but it really was just cameras on, catching a very organic, natural, fun time between two buddies. And that's what we did.
Yeah, dude, like I love where you're going with this, what you were saying there about like, yeah, just two buddies having fun. I feel like it's so relatable.
Yeah.
And it's so fun to watch because I'm like, oh, I can relate. I have similar moments with my buddies.
Yeah.
Right in my version of gnarly.
Totally.
And you've certainly got a great way of breaking this stuff down, making it sound really simple, and, you know, sharing that passion. I'd love to see some videos in the future, kind of like helping people achieve their version of gnarly, as you call it.
Yeah, and that's, stay tuned. I think that will be happening with one of the brands they're really interested in. And I just want to produce really authentic stuff that relates to people and doesn't have like another agenda necessarily. It's just, yeah, man, we're not here for a long time. Bikes bring me happiness, and I would like to show people how bikes can also bring them happiness. I don't know, it's like I have a pretty simple life mantra, but that's it. And I said this also in the Pink Bike podcast. If I'm no longer providing any value to people on videos, that's okay. Like I'm not gonna try harder. If like something goes out and flops, and I'm not gonna go out and try harder to make people like what I put out. I'll be like,
That's
I don't care.
such a unique and cool thing about your position, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
you'll still be Steve, you'll still be building trails, you'll
Yeah.
still be riding trails, and you'll still have an income through your career at the Firehall.
Yeah. Like I'm really not even trying to like think too far into the future. I'm just going to enjoy how this goes now and take the opportunities, which have fortunately been plentiful. There's been a lot of sick opportunities, and I think this next year with Kelsey, where we're going to travel. So we're going to go down to Utah and shoot at Rampage sites, something I've always wanted to do. Push my riding there, flip some big step down, hit some bigger drops than I've ever done. Go back to Williams Lake. I want to shoot up there with my dad, build some new stuff on the shore.
That'd be super special to see.
Yeah. And, I love building, and the cool thing is even if it's not the gnarliest feature you've ever seen, you've never seen it because I just built it. So at least there's something not repetitive there.
Totally, yeah, just seeing new features. And I'd love to see the process of like from this is this piece of forest, I see a line there,
Yeah.
to like riding it one day.
Yeah, and I think we have funding as well. We're going to shoot a year-long documentary behind the scenes of next year.
Fantastic.
Not sure if Kelsey brought that up in her podcast.
No,
but,
it's a first scoop right here.
yeah, so I mean, that's not 100%, but we're getting the funding from a few brands and people, and I've got a guy that I've worked with in the past, and has like a huge interest in the mental health side of things, and just like I think behind the scenes videos are better than edits.
Yeah.
Like Fabio Wimmer drops like the craziest edit ever, like a 5-6 minute video, but then when he puts out his hour-long documentary after the fact, I love watching that. Like, what struggles did you have to do to get that shot? So we're gonna try and do a little something like that. Like, just film all the filming, film the building, film me and my dad riding together in Williams Lake. So that's kind of my goal for next year.
Dude,
One video, one documentary. That's all you get.
That's fantastic. I
Yeah.
think that's enough to it, especially if it's a longer form thing and you can see more of the process and see like more of what goes into getting that one epic shot on that one epic feature. Or
Yeah, it's cool to
whatever
share.
it is.
It's really cool to share.
Yeah. You've obviously had some really influential mentors along your journey. Is there any like bit of advice or like way of riding or anything that's kind of stuck with you throughout this whole journey that you think back to?
I would say as far back as I can remember with my biking career back in 2003, 2004, Ken Maud, who's one of the owners of Lynn Valley Bikes, my dad paid him to coach me because I was just a loose kid, like loose, just blowing up off stuff. And he's like, Ken was shooting the North Shore Extreme videos. He was like riding the steeps, like gnarliest dude on the shore. And he took me in and he mentored me and he took me down Fifth Horseman, which has now become, 20 years later, one of my favorite trails, and why Kelsey and I shot a video on it. But he taught me my foundations of biking, how to ride steeps, and it's all the riding that I like doing now. So like, I'm not the fastest and I'm not the best at corners, berms, and jumps, but like the type of riding that I do, he set the foundation for that. And then filming with Digger, who's hilarious because he would build all these features that he couldn't even hit himself, and then they were not even tested. He would just bring me to them and he'd be like, oh yeah, this should work. But I would guinea pig them, and it was amazing. And then guys, it's so cool is I've watched Gulovich, Tippy, and Simmons my entire life, and now they're friends of mine.
Yeah.
Like I just rode with Gully the other day. He's coming back from a big injury. Wade, riding for his godfather's garage company now, getting to ride with him, ride moto, shoot videos with him. It's like, you kidding me? Like, these are the guys that dropped the best video parts ever of the Freeride Entertainment days, Neuro Disorder days. So yeah, Gully, I think Gully is one of my favorite guys to ride with because his like wisdom and how he approaches things is very similar to kind of all the things I talked about today. He's like, I've done the Rampage, I've done the gnarly stuff. Is it in me still? Totally. Do I need to risk myself every day? No. Biking's fun. And that's what I think Gully sells the best. Gully sells biking as fun.
Totally.
Because he goes out, he travels the world, has good times. Like, I think that guy's got it dialed almost more than anybody.
He's got the fun thing dialed. He was on this podcast as well. And that was one of the things.
Oh, it's nice.
Yeah, I got out of it. It was like, 3 months after his injuries, just kind of back to biking. We went and rode John Deere on Mount Seymour. So super chill trail for him, but he was just having the best time in the world. He had the best day.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, yeah, this guy's rode Rampage, but he can still have the best day ever riding a blue trail on the shore.
And you'd almost forget it when you ride with him because he's just like, he doesn't push you. He'll ride at the back of the pack, just having fun. Doesn't need to prove that he is the gnarliest. He's just having fun. So having mentors like that have been really, really cool for me because, yeah, they just learn that you don't have to try and always be the gnarliest or the best. You can have fun. There's a lot of different ways you can provide value if you want to have a position in the industry.
Totally, yeah.
So yeah.
So much, yeah, valuable learning there along the years.
Totally.
I'm curious, like going right back to those early rides, those early sessions with Ken on Fifth Horseman, like what were some of the things he taught you that you carried on to this day about riding steeps? And it's one of the most common things I get asked as a coach, like, how do we ride steeps?
Yeah, him and Wade put up really well. The shore specifically is like looking for islands of safety, is committing, not just like pulling a fistful of brakes in the wrong area, but yeah, like head up, look at your line, always have your head up, and you're gonna get from here to here, and that's where you can brake. All these routes that you're going over, if you apply brakes, you're just gonna stuff your wheel into a hole and then OTB and crash. But like pick that line, and that's where you gotta go, and that's where you're gonna brake. So I think that was line choice.
Yeah,
line choice from those guys was huge.
What about if it's a compound feature? So we've got like steep section of routes, island of safety, steep section of routes, island of safety, something else after that.
Yeah, body positioning and line choice is huge. So if you have a section like that and you come into it with reservation and fear and poor body position, and you're in the back seat, you might make the first section, and when you get to your island of safety, if you're in a weak body position, you're not going to stop. You're going to stop, 50% worse than if you were over that front end, driving your weight in, super aggressive. Like Remy and I can both hit that Garanga drop and basically stop.
Yeah.
But that's because like our shoulders are engaged, we're over the bike and we're driving the weight in. So yeah, that's
so it sounds a little bit like committing to the whole section.
Yeah.
But also like resetting, checking the body position, slowing down each time.
Not breaking form. Like you want to learn the best body position is just go watch Enduro World Cup. Literally watch those guys. They're just squared up, so strong, weight that's driven like so right into the ground. It's really like that actually changed. I got into watching World Cup and it's like,
I find it fascinating, like watching their torso.
Yeah,
because their torso kind of just like is.
They're like a gimbal. They're like.
Yeah, totally. It stays so like centered and stable, and then their arms are moving. Arms and legs are just moving, doing this dance as the bike just moves around like crazy underneath them.
Yeah, man, that's like head up, line choice, and loose where you need to be loose, strong and tight where you need to be tight. It's cool, man. There's so many aspects of riding. You can never stop getting better, and sometimes you want to go focus on being the best at jumps and berms. If you focus purely on that, then sometimes your steep stuff kind of struggles a little bit, and you get back into steeps, you're like, it's been a while. Haven't really done this. Like when I go shoot in cam loops, like this year for the Dirt Diaries, I'm like, I have not hit a 35-foot blind step down in a while. That's just really scary. I don't remember how to do this. So you got to find your legs for that again.
Right. And then what's your process for doing that? You rock up out there in cam loops.
There has to be like there's got to be a little bit of a not huck and pray, but sometimes you have to take a little bit of risk. Like when you're hitting a step down that's a little bit bigger or an air, your wheels aren't on the ground. Couple run-ins, trust your speed, keep your front end up, brace for impact if you screw up.
And here's a question: when you visualize something like that, so a bigger step down, you're in the air for a long time, are you visualizing and feeling like what it's going to be like in the air for that long? I know Johan mentioned like when he visualizes the race run, he will visualize it in real time. So if it's a 3-minute run, that process takes him 3 minutes. For you with a big step down, is the air time in your head the same, roughly the same amount of time?
Yeah, 100%. Back in my cliff jumping days, when I would cliff jump into water, I would huck rocks off, and I would count the time it took the rock to fall, and I'd be like, and that's how I would, like, if I was double flipping something 80 plus feet, like, you don't want to flop or you'll be super hurt. So I would toss it and close my eyes and hear it, and then that would, when I was throwing the flips, it was timed to what I saw, and it would usually work.
So fascinating.
except for when it didn't.
And are you consciously keeping your breathing rolling while you're in the air? Are you thinking about that?
I don't think so.
Yep.
I don't know.
Kind of hold the breath. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know actually. I don't think I've ever thought about my breathing when I'm in the air. But yeah, for the Dirt Diaries video, nothing crazy in cam loops, but decent sized step downs with some decent consequences. But I'd picture what it would be like in the air, and I would relax, especially on a hip that's like this. If you try to carve off that lip, you're going to end up in the wrong spot. You have to actually point yourself and catch air in the wrong direction, get up in the air, be up there, and then crank your table and shift direction in the air.
So you're in this position where you're calm enough mentally to be able to think and make all these decisions mid-air.
I think you have to be, or it won't go well.
Yeah.
That's where you see guys stiff-legged, and yeah.
It's just fascinating for me, like the level of mastery you must have.
I don't know if I have to get forward. It's always learning.
Totally, yeah. Like such a humble approach, but from where I'm sitting, it's a mastery to be able to be in the air and be able to think about all these little things and turn in and making decisions and all of that stuff once you're in the air.
I would say that it's not necessarily a weakness, but it's something that it's hard. Like you lose it quickly, and we don't have a lot of that on the shore or Squamish at all. If you're not riding bike park, like I just don't ride jumps. You don't really have big jumps around here. So that is a skill that needs to be like worked on, and I don't know.
Right, so you consciously make an effort to put time into that.
Well, Kamloops kids, when they come to the shore and they ride in the wet, they're like, holy crap, this is gnarly, how are you guys doing this? And then I go ride with Kamloops kids, and I'm like, you guys are insane.
Totally.
Like, you're just following each other blind into enormous step downs, but it's just the riding that and it's your comfort level.
Yeah, we almost become products of our environment, right?
Exactly, yeah. And that's why I love biking. There's so many different pump track, dirt jumps, racing, freeride.
Totally do.
So many.
Man, this has been such a great conversation. I wanted to give you the opportunity here. I know we could obviously keep talking for another 2 hours.
It's been great, yeah.
And touch on so many more interesting subjects. But is there anything I haven't asked you today that you were hoping to talk about on this podcast?
Man, like nothing is really jumping to mind. I think you really hit a lot of the things that are really important to me right now, and that is the breaking down and normalizing just the mental health side of things. And life is just a journey, and finding the tools that work for you and the support network, and you can scoff at it and laugh at it and be like, oh, I don't need that stuff, but I think it's super important. And if you're consciously working at all these things, like you can really improve your quality of life. Like I'm just really aware of all these things now.
Yeah, and thank you for reiteration, like the importance of all of these things. One thing I did want to ask, do you have any good resources for people on the North Shore that may be dealing with concussions, or just it's good information for people to know in the future?
I don't have any specific resources. Always happy to help find those. We fortunately, through the Fire Hall, have these programs that are offered to us as firefighters. So, I use some of those, and then just honestly chatting with Tori. I had a really good chat with Tori.
So Tori
who was on your podcast. And yeah, like honestly, put the feelers out. People are connected, and people, like, it wouldn't take much. If you ask one person, like, hey, I'm having concussion symptoms, who do I talk to? I bet somebody or many people have like 10 different resources.
Yeah, there's some fantastic people in the Sea to Sky that I'm aware of. Because of this podcast, we've got Adam Van Loo through Union Sports.
Yeah.
Here in Squamish, I believe North Shore Sports Physio.
Yeah.
Also has concussion specialists as well. So.
Yeah, it's a very common, and it's a well-researched, people are aware of it. There's resources out there.
Totally do.
Yeah.
Wise words. As we wrap up here, do you have any sponsors or industry partners that you'd like to mention?
There is several of them. Unfortunately, I can look at my bike over there and say incredibly fired up to sign for another 2 years with DaVinci.
Congratulations.
They've been insane, and there is no pressure. Like I'm signing my contracts. I'm like, am I missing a page or something? It's basically they're like, go make biking look fun.
Wow.
That's it. No like pressure to do anything else. And then Fox and Raceface have been amazing. We Are One Composites and Ride Wrap. What else? STG and STFU. Maxxis tires have been insane. Cushcore. I don't want to just list stuff off. You can see all my bike checks and go to there. But yeah, all the partners have been amazing. They basically like kind of almost hand select them as the products that I would love to run anyways, and they're happy to support.
Yeah, credit to the work you're doing, and just so great to see so many rad sponsors that are happy for, like, hey Steve, you just go do Steve.
It's really cool. It's cool to see that there's still people that will support that and see some value in that.
Totally.
That it doesn't just have to be absolutely pushing your friggin' limits, because eventually you find the limits.
Totally. Yeah.
And I know that I'm conscious that I will eventually, I may find my limits again. I could crash, I could have something big maybe, but I'm aware every time I pick up my bike. Like today I was like, if this goes bad, like I'm on the side of a cliff, it could be really bad. But that was just in the back of my mind, and I just made good decisions about it. And if I crashed and hurt myself, I was doing it for the right reasons.
Right.
Like I was doing it because I wanted to. I know it could happen, but I wouldn't be like, what an idiot. Like I pulled for that gap. Like I knew it was going to be bad, and here I am with 2 broken legs. But no, today was fun.
Yeah, sounds like kind of assessing the risk each day and being like, am I comfortable with it or am I not? Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Being at peace with that.
Yeah, thanks for that. Like I said, a lot of rad companies, and I'll just keep pushing my riding, and that's about it. I mean, my words are getting peanut butter mouth now after a long day and no sleep.
For someone, that's had no sleep, that's been out on a gnarly ride, you've done a fantastic job.
It's going to be a great sleep tonight.
I bet. For those that aren't aware, where can people find you, follow your adventures online, and see some of the great films you're producing with Kelsey?
Just my Instagram is at @Vanderhoek. I don't post very much on YouTube, but you can search my name, and occasionally I'll drop a few videos there. And that's where you'll find any kind of series that I do in the future, along with bike checks, and all of Kelsey's nice stuff goes there.
Fantastic, dude. Thanks so much for being a part of this podcast. It's been an absolute blast.
Man, it's awesome. I think you're doing great things here and asking great questions.
Thank you, dude.
What's up, guys? Just one more thing before you hit the trails. If you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe, and don't be a stranger. I'd love to hear from you about any topics or any particular episodes that you enjoyed, and even about any guests that you'd like to hear me have on the show in the future. You can find me on Instagram at _mind_mountain. This podcast, mountain biking, and mindset are all things that are very close to my heart, so I feel super grateful to be able to share these conversations with you. So much love to you all for taking the time to listen. I'll see you next time.